Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today we're talking about toxic masculinity and its impact on gender identity and gender expression. Let's go ahead and get into some real quick definitions so that you understand what I'm talking about. First and foremost, I want to be very clear. When I am talking about the idea of fluid gender and gender expression and the ideas of gender being just a social construct, I am speaking about the experience of gender understanding that people go through. I am not specifically talking about the trans experience. Being transgender is an entirely different set of circumstances, of rules, of understanding. Being transgender is an identity all in its own and a valid identity all in its own. And I don't want anything I say to come off like I am belittling the experience of our trans friends. In general, when society as a whole talks about masculinity and femininity, it assigns masculinity to men and femininity to women. I've already done a video about femininity. For the purposes of this video, let's talk about how the term masculinity came to be. What we understand as masculinity comes from way back in the days of hunting and gathering and not having permanent shelter. The men would be the ones who were there for protection. So they needed to be bigger, stronger, more directed, aggressive, often scary. All of those things are required of the protectors of the tribe. As society evolved, we didn't need that as much anymore, but that still was the expectation and the understanding that were put on men. In the 80s and 90s, it became more widely understood in society that it was not okay for men to be aggressive, sexually dominating, rude, hyper-competitive, dominant and controlling, lacking emotion, and generally sexist or chauvinistic. It was beginning to be unacceptable in society for that to happen. So at those times, there was this draw for men to get together and do those things, and that way they could have that energy released from them and not be that way in society. We're going to call that a valiant effort at trying for balance. But even as that movement is going on, we still have the generally accepted understanding of what masculinity is as winning things, as competitive, as strong, and therefore protective of the less strong objects or people or countries that it's protecting. So this idea of masculinity being the winner in everything was still pervasive and is kind of still pervasive today. The idea of masculinity being unfeeling and aggressive is not necessarily one we need to spend a lot of time leaning into today, because I'm pretty sure y'all understand that assumption. Where it becomes toxic is where that expectation of exemplifying those emotions or those traits is put on anyone who is displaying masculinity and then used to keep others down. That's when it becomes toxic. When by and large women are afraid to walk to their car alone at night. Right now in the video is about when most of my male audience is going to say, yeah, but not every man is like this, right? I've never said that. If there are people watching this who display some of these traits and feel like there's nothing wrong with it, or feel like I'm trying to make them feel bad about displaying these traits, I would encourage you to look inside of you and figure out why you think I'm talking directly to you. Because I'm talking about a generalized concept so that we can move forward in understanding how this is impacting our understanding of gender identity and sexual attraction. Not to make anyone feel bad or feel good because they do or do not embody these traits. I think it's important for us to be really clear about why toxic masculinity is problematic. It leads to bullying. It leads to isolation. When they're exemplified in school, it leads to discipline of people in school, which also can sometimes mean missing academic time and lower grades. When older, it can lead to jail time. It can lead to domestic violence, sexual assault, risky behaviors, substance abuse. Things come from feeling the need to exemplify this in control, unfeeling, unconnected, unemotional, and also scary demeanor. Living that way for too long removes your ability to balance it. I don't want that. The portion of this that impacts the idea of coming out and sexual orientation and gender identity is where people feel the most confusion in trying to identify who they are. So for instance, if all their lives little boys see men who are in control and providers and not connected and not empathetic and not emotional and also are attracted to women, they grow up and are attracted to other men. It is deep within our psyches that we identify our traits with who we are attracted to. That's just in our psyches. I'm not saying it's an elemental part of who we are, but it's there. Often gay men report they feel like they have to be effeminate in order to be acceptable to other gay men because they have to run so far from the masculine traits. Even if they want to embody some of them, they don't know how to. There's also men who embody these toxic masculine traits in order to prevent people from thinking they might be gay. Homophobia is hugely perpetrated by this idea of toxic masculinity. It also has a huge impact on gender expression and the understanding of women for who they are and who they're attracted to. Here's why. Society as a whole has applied masculine traits to women who like other women because that's the way society in its heteronormativity decides it makes the most sense. But that expectation, that assigning of those traits is really damaging to people. If you feel like dressing a certain way one day, or you feel like styling your hair in a certain way, or you want to wear a dress or wear makeup, it should not matter to anyone what label you're putting on yourself in regards to orientation or identity. Clothing does not have a gender. It definitely should not be determined that a piece of clothing is masculine or feminine. Many men and women find themselves sort of locked into this societal expectation of them due to toxic masculinity. This understanding of masculinity also comes with the footnote of heterosexual. And the heteronormativity that toxic masculinity actually perpetrates is harmful to everyone because there should be complete freedom in people being able to take on masculine or feminine traits into themselves. The opposite of masculinity is not necessarily femininity, but the goal of both should be balance. Current evangelical Christian movement can also be tied back to toxic masculinity. The understanding that anybody who is not with me is against me, or anybody who does not believe what I'm saying just on the basis of me being me is a threat to me, is a toxic masculine trait. You do not need to be a man to be perpetrating that assumption. The understanding that people making rules for you to follow are actually putting you in danger is a toxic masculine trait. Not everybody is out to get everybody, but when you live your life in the mode of I have to protect and I have to defend, I have to be the biggest one out there, you are not going to be receptive to people trying to help you out. Because when you accept help, that shows weakness for this mindset. In reality, accepting help is not weakness. I don't know who needs to hear that, but hopefully you know that now. Women who are coming out report not feeling like they can continue to wear the same clothes they used to wear, or speak the same way they used to, or present themselves the way that they used to in order to gain acceptance within the queer community because they're too feminine or they're too masculine. And the idea that we're prescribing these things to people who are just trying to figure out who they are is so harmful. When people are not able to, from the very beginning, discover who they are and how that works, when people are coming to this later and later in life because they never had the opportunity to explore that earlier, or they were never safe enough to explore it earlier, they've had so many years of this heteronormativity and masculinity is stronger and femininity is weaker and all of those feelings for so many years. It makes it so much harder to discover who you are and how you want to move about in the world and how you want the world to understand you, because you are still living under these pressures and expectations of both masculine and feminine traits. Okay, so what do we do about this? Well, the first thing is to understand that most of what you're feeling when you have confusion about masculinity or femininity, or when you bristle when someone is coming in hot on something, or when you get frustrated when somebody is indecisive about something, much of that comes from that internalized toxic masculinity. It doesn't actually matter what sex you are. We all have some internalized toxic masculinity, much like all of us queer people have some level of internalized homophobia. So giving yourself a break on that and understanding that a lot of that is put on you and not actually your choice is first. Secondly, you need to sort of start pulling that back. Understanding your needs and your wants outside of the expectations of society and the things that you think people are going to think about you if you walk out the door in that certain outfit. Removing those expectations from your own mind first of what is masculine, what is feminine, what is necessary for you to portray in order to be attractive to others. Giving yourself time to pull that apart is also going to be essential. Lastly, if you want to learn any more about gender norms, you can check out this video, or you can check out this video about toxic femininity. That's all for today. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to see you next week. And until then, take care of yourselves and each other.